So, welcome everyone. We're Bojo, Makoma Indigenous Kas, Michigan Dodem, Nashkan Zivi and Dunjiba, Anishinaabe and Indian Dao, Ojibwe again Indian Dao. We're really honored to have Jan Longboat here today to talk to us about the cultivation of medicines. This is my class right now, and most of my students are here. Hopefully a few more come. Trying to find their way probably. And over the last week and a half we've been covering medicines and plants and the connection of those plants to indigenous peoples and how we viewed those, etc., etc. And it's really, we're really gifted to actually have medicine woman and somebody who's, from what I know, has dedicated her life to those medicines. And I was able to, in the summer, go on a medicine walk with you and learned a lot in a short time, and way more than I could ever remember. But part of our tradition as Anishinaabe is to offer tobacco, and I've had this feather for a real long time. And I opened one of my drawers and I saw it, and I'm like, oh, I have to put that there. And yeah, it's a wild turkey feather. So let you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. I just want to say Sego, Sewaguego, everyone. I'm delighted to be here. Honored to be here today in your class, and I guess some community members are here as well. My name is Gahet Dio. I'm from the Mohawk Nation, from the Turtle Clan, and from 6 Nations of the Grande River, where I was born and raised, and I still live there today. And I was just telling Andrew, boy, I couldn't hardly get out of bed this morning. I had a group of students from Laurier University where I've been doing some work with them in Brantford, and they came to help me garden yesterday and winterize my garden. So, boy, I was working so hard, and so anyway, it was really good. I was just so grateful and thankful for that. Protecting the land and the cultivation of medicines. That's a big topic, big topic. But what I'm going to do is kind of tell you a story, and a true story. And I had the opportunity and the privilege of sitting at the knee of what we call our Dotahs, our elders. We call them, some people call them elders. We call them Dotahs. And Dotah is a Mohawk word, and it means both male and female. So it's both grandma and grandpa. And so I sat at the knee of these Dotahs all my life in our community at Grande River, and I listened to them. I listened to what they had to say, and never questioned what they had to say. I just listened, and I never sometimes knew what they were talking about. I still heard what they had to say, and so it was in my head. It was in my brain. And also I assisted them. I just didn't listen. I also helped them, assisted them with whatever they were doing. And they never asked, they expected, I guess. And so I assisted them with picking medicines, making medicines, harvesting the garden, planting the garden, churning butter, picking mushrooms. Whatever they were doing, I would do. Making bread. And we always helped our own people unconditionally. And so, plus I could come from a big family back at Grande River. In my family, there's 10 siblings. and all the other people that I grew up with. The other thing is, when I started school in my formal part of my education, I went to a one-room school. My grandkids must think I'm ancient because there's no such a thing now, but I started at a one-room school. And when I was growing up, we never started school till we were 7. There was such a thing as kindergarten or pre-kindergarten, or now I guess there's pre-kindergarten. I don't know. But it was a good time. It was a good time to begin my formal education. And with one teacher with 8 grades. Almost unheard of today. And when I look back to this my early years, I think I can relate it, this experience, to our life in the longhouse, because we're longhouse people. We are, and so sometimes in the longhouses there were 30 families in the longhouse, and so, but many families. So that's the way this one-room school was. It was many families, and so I really like that. I really like that that way of learning. Plus, I think that the reinforcement of learning is the way our people have always learned. And so in 1st grade, I heard all the other work up to 8th grade. In 2nd grade, I heard all the work up to 8th grade, 3rd and 4th and 5th. So when I got to 8th grade, I heard it 8 times. And so it was a breeze to get through our work. And so to me, that seems like that's what was happening in the longhouse. And I really like that. I really like that situation. So I'm glad that happened. I was really fortunate that it happened. And so our community grew up together. We grew up together. Not that way today back home. They've amalgamated their community schools into 3 large schools, and now it broke down the communities, which is not, I don't think, a good thing. So, plus the fact that we had a very, what can I say? We had a teacher that went against all provincial guidelines. We spent our years outside. Our learning years was out in the bush, outside. And so, you know, we only stayed in school when we absolutely had to. And there was this man, he used to come about twice a year. He used to come to our school. His name was Mr. Webster, and he was non-native. And somebody said he was the inspector. And so we would have to stay in school, and we would have to do this and that. So I didn't like Mr. Webster very much because he made us stay in school. So anyway, we learned together, and it was reinforced by the Dotahs. Well, as I grew older, and you know, went on to high school and university, and I kept thinking about the way our old people lived, the way I lived. I had that class yesterday, and I was telling them that I grew up in a log cabin with 10 kids, a mom and dad, and no running water, and no electricity, and a wood stove. you know. And I loved it. I loved it. I would have no problem today doing the same thing. And living off the land. And so I just absolutely love that way of life. So, but nevertheless, in 1948, was when electricity came to Six Nations. So it wasn't that long ago. In 1948, and I think it was a year after when the telephone came. The telephone lines came to our community. And of course, most people couldn't afford it, so they didn't get a telephone, even though the lines were there, or electricity. And so my growing up years was that kind of life, living off the land and letting the environment look after us, letting the whole environment take care of us. And so my dad was a great hunter, fisherman. My two brothers were hunters, and so they hunted our food in the winter and the summer. My grandma, my mother's mother, was she worked with medicines. She never called herself a medicine woman, neither do I. But she had the knowledge to use the plant medicines. And she lived a mile down the road from where I grew up, and I live now where she lived when I was growing up, where my grandma lived, in the bush. It's practically all in the bush. And so I made some decisions early in my life, and I thought they were good decisions. I made decisions to not to drink. I've never drank in my life, or smoke. I made those decisions early in life, and I stuck to them. I stuck to them as well, and neither did my mother ever drink or smoke. She was a beautiful woman, and a beautiful teacher. So I devoted my life to learning. I devoted my life to finding out things. And I believe I have to credit that to those Dotahs. They helped me to become a wanderer, but also a wanderer. I'm also a wanderer. I love traveling. But they taught me to think. That's what they taught me, to think. And they would say, you know, think again and again and again before you make a decision. And I guess that's the foundation of Haudenosaunee people, is the power of the good mind. And they would say, Scott Nagulang, have a good mind. And I heard that word all my life, but I really didn't know what it really meant in the Mohawk language. And so they also helped me to become fearless, not extravagant, cautious, but fearless. And so that's part of who I am as well. Even today, as old as I am, people will say, "Are you going to drive all the way to Kingston?" Sure, why not? You know, jump in a car and go. So anyway, and so that the way of life became just really embedded in who I am. And I'm saying this because that's the way, not just me, not my family, but the whole community grew up this way. The whole community lived the same, lived off the land, and so, but not everybody wanted to do the same thing. And my choice was to learn about the environment, to learn about the land. I remember my dad he'd go outside and he would look up into the sky world. And these old people really knew the sky world and understood the sky world. And he'd say, well, you kids, you better put up the, get ready for the rain. He said, it's coming. Beautiful night, full of stars and bright. And he'd say, you get the rain barrels ready. And we'd look and think, well, what's he looking at, you know? Because sure enough, it would rain that night. And so finally, when I was about 15 years old, I said, well, how do you know it's going to rain? What are you looking at? What are you looking at up there? And he said, I'm looking at the moon. I'm looking at our grandmother, the moon. He said, she's holding the water, and she's going to dump it out tonight. And sure enough, that's what happens. So if you watch the moon cycle at a certain, the moon is tilted a certain way, it'll dump the water out that night. He was never wrong, and it still happens that way. And so, you know, the knowledge, I guess they call it this today indigenous knowledge. Indigenous knowledge. I just thought it was a way of life. But today they're calling it indigenous knowledge. But I believe it's more than indigenous knowledge. It's indigenous science. It's indigenous science. And it's the indigenous science of a civilization. We are a civilization. We're not just a culture. We're more than a culture. We have everything that any other world civilization has today. And to understand that. And so they understood, you know, the four directions and what that was going to bring. They knew the weather. And I remember my dad bringing in, right this time of the year, harvest time, he would bring in the wild nuts, the hickory nuts, the black walnuts, and he'd look at this hickory nut. Everybody here know what hickory nuts are? Yeah, some don't, some do. And anyway, if you look at the hickory nut, it has four parts to the shell. And if you take the shell off and look at the covering, if it's thick, if it's a thick covering, we're going to have a cold winter. If it's thin, we're going to have a mild winter. So nature's never wrong. Nature has never been wrong. It's always, it knows what to do. And the old people used to call that original instructions. If the environment has original instructions. And those original instructions come from the Creator. So goyant diso. That's where they come from. Not from a book or anything. They come from the Creator. Well, I found that even as a child, magical. I found it magical because I thought, how we know all this stuff and without any major instruction. And so the more that I learned, the more I wanted to learn about the environment. I remember also right now the leaves on the trees, and the women would go out and they would say, while the leaves have turned red and yellow now, they said, you men, it's time to hunt. And for years I wondered, what has the red and yellow leaves got to do with hunting? But that was the only way they could tell us that now in the spring the animals mate, and now they're raising their little ones throughout the summer, and now the little ones are on their own. So now you can take a mother and a father. And so we only ate big animals during the winter. That's it. The deer, you know, the moose, only during the winter. And so, but that was their way of knowing that it was time to hunt. I think that's miraculous. Yeah. And so there's just so much that I learned about watching the sky world. Right now, also, for this time of the year, I'm sort of focused on this time of the year because that's what we're going through right now. If you look up into the sky world, Orion, the star formation of Orion, is out. He's the hunter with the bow and arrow. And so that also, the sky world tells us it's time to hunt as well. And so it's pretty miraculous so that's what my grandma used to say. She'd say, what you need to do is to learn the language of the universe. And I wondered, what is that? What is the language of the universe? Well, now, as years went by, I've learned the language of the universe. And so, I think, you know, I would always ask them, you know, when you're telling a story, where do you begin? Where do you begin? When you're teaching, where do you begin? And they would always say, you begin at the beginning. That's where you begin. And for us, the beginning is our creation story. That's the beginning. That's the beginning in any of our nations, is the creation story. And we all have different creation stories. So for us, it's the sky woman. The sky woman that fell from the sky. And she came from another world into this physical world. And she brought with her what we needed to survive. She brought with her the seeds and certain medicines. So that's where they say you begin. You always begin at the beginning. And it's a long story, the creation story. It's long, but I just kind of wanted to begin there to tell you that, you know, that we believe that woman is the first environment. So the woman became the first environment in this physical world that we're in. And we celebrate that. And so we received our instructions from that woman of whose role it is to do what. I've often wondered, you know, being so many people in the longhouse, I thought, how did we get along? What was the key to good relationships? I thought, because today, two families can't already live together. And we had 30, you know, what is it that we knew that helped us to be able to have a good working relationship? So the women said, well, it's only 3 things, they said. It's real simple. Good relationships is really simple. They said it's only 3 things. The men knew how to look after the women, and the women knew how to look after the men, and then men and women knew how to look after the children. For the men, it's called roles and responsibilities. And for the women, it's called roles and relationships. 2 little bit different things, roles and relationships. And I thought about that a lot, and it's so true that, you know, we had those boundaries of male-female boundaries and never crossed the line. So I think today it's crossing the line that gets us into a little bit of dissension. And but if we looked at our role and relationship, that's kept us right in line. And so I think that's a pretty easy way to take care of a household, or a family. So, the other thing I want to say before I get more into the medicines is that my mom and dad were fluent Mohawk speakers. Both of them, my aunties, my grandma, my grandpapa, all of our family. However, because my dad was in residential school, I'm sure most of you heard about residential schools, he wouldn't teach us the language. Didn't want us to get abused. And so, but I heard the language all my life. I heard it, but it was never spoken to us. It was taught all around us. And so, and I became really, really interested in the language and the behavior of speakers and the storytellers. And so, and the old people would always say that your culture is in the language. Your culture is in the language. And I thought, what does that really mean? So as I got older, I wondered about it some more, and I thought, I'm going to go find out. I'm going to go find out what they mean. So I went into Mohawk immersion. Let me see now, it's almost 14 years ago now. I went back to Mohawk Valley, our original homelands, into Mohawk immersion. And they're absolutely right. The culture is in the language, totally. And so I'm pretty interested now in the language, and have been every chance I get, I go back into immersion, and I've got taken a step further, and working with a gentleman at home who can take the language and break it down and tell you what the root word of the word really means and how it fits into the culture. He's pretty amazing young man. So I've been working with him for the last about 5 years. And so when I went back to learn the language, I always remembered the old people saying, we have no such a thing as past, present, or future. That does not exist in our vocabulary. Past, present, and future. And I wondered about that. What did they mean by that? And so they said that's a Western thought. That's a Western worldview. That's not ours. So I thought, well, what is ours if that's a Western? So it all goes back to the language. Is in the Mohawk language, and I'm sure it's in Ojibwe, Cree, or whatever language you're speaking of, it's the same thing, is that in the Mohawk language, we have 3 words for now. And I thought, well, that's strange. Why would we have 3 words for now? And so I investigated that. I went to find out, what does that really mean? And I went to the old speakers, and I asked them, can you tell me what that really means? I don't understand it. And this one old Dotah, she didn't know how to explain it, but she turned me around. She said, look as far as you can the other way. Look and see what you can see. Well, I couldn't see anything because I didn't know what I was looking for. And so I said, she said, turn around again and look far back. Well, finally I got it. She was talking about our ancestors, our ancestral people way back. I said, okay, I understand that. And she said, right now, she said, so the first word is Oksa. That means in Mohawk, something happened, something transpired, come and see. Something happened back here. Come and see what it is. And this one here is Nuwa, the word is now. And what it means now, so right now, in this moment, and for the last 15 minutes, I've been talking about Oksaw. So I've moved that knowledge forward to now. And now, if we do not do this, if we do not share Indigenous knowledge now as Indigenous people, to the young people, there will not be the next now. We just go on. And so what I'm saying is, if you can get the picture, the knowledge just keeps being transferred, and it just keeps going around and around and around and around forever. There is no past. There's only now, now, and now. I think for me, that's the most profound thing I have ever learned. It still gives me goosebumps. So when I learned that, I realized what is my role and responsibility as an Indigenous woman. I have a big responsibility. As a life giver, I have a humongous big responsibility. And that's why I'm still traveling and working at my age. I remember a few years ago, I was up at Trent University at their elders gathering. Was going every year up there, and one of our Dotahs, Ernie Benedict, who was then, now he's passed on now, but he was in probably his early 90s at that time. And I said, gee, Ernie, how are you? I said, how are you doing? Oh, he said, good. I said, well, do you think you might gonna retire soon? And he looked me right in the eye, and he said, go ahead, deal. He said, what you do, I'm going to tell you something. He said, what you do, he said, you just get in your car and you drive till your tires wear out. You don't retire. I said, oh, you really told me. So anyway, I remember that of Ernie. So we just go on and on and on, until we're here no more. And for us, there's no such a thing as retirement. Yeah. And so, as time went on, I spent more and more time with my grandma, my mother's mother. And if I were going to introduce myself the old way today, I would have said I came through the waters of Gutjit Juni Thomas. And she came through the waters of Ginny Thomas. And she came through the waters of Caroline Thomas. And she came through the waters of Julia Thomas. That's who I am. That's who I am as a woman. That's what the old people, that's the way they always said. And even yet today, if we go to people will come, or I'm in the community and I might meet some young people, I'll just say, who's your grandma? Who's your Dotah? Who's your, then I'll know what family they come from. So we still do that today. Who's your family? And so I spent a lot of time with my Dotah, my mother's mother, and watched her. I watched her as people came in the middle of the night with a lantern. Nobody carried a lantern at that time. Came and they would want certain medicines. And she had baskets and baskets hanging on her ceiling in her little house. And she knew exactly which one to use, and I would watch her, and I would listen to what she was saying and what they said, and so on and so forth. So finally I got to be about the age of 7 years old, and one day she said to me, it's time now, you're old enough now, it's time to help. It's time to help me. She was getting old at that time. And she said, but first of all, you got to prepare yourself. You got to prepare yourself for what you're going to do. Well, I didn't really understand that. I'm only 7 years old. And she said, I want you to go in the bush. And I live there now, and the bush is still there. I want you to go and sit by the water. And so I went, and it was like, the water is like almost like like a swamp. But she had it all cleared around this water, just like it's beautiful. She had her place really, really beautiful. And so I went and I sat there, and I guess looking back, I thought it was a long time. It might have been a minute or so. Came back, and she asked me, what did I see? I said, I didn't see anything. She said, then you got to go back. So again, I went back second time, third time, fourth time. She sent me back before I actually looked in the water to see me, to see my reflection as a woman, as a human being. And it was a transformation for me that day, because what it did was it brought me to the present. It brought me to now. And I began to be very aware of what was going on around me. And that's what the old people said, always be aware of what's going on around you. And what they meant by that is the energy that's going on around us. Be aware of that. And so I became very aware of what was going on around me, energy-wise and environmental-wise. And so it scared me, because I had never had that kind of awareness or that kind of feeling before. And I never felt so close to myself, so aware of me. And so it kind of was scary for me. And I actually started to cry and ran back to the house. And my grandma asked me what happened, and I told her. She started to laugh. And she said, well, that's what I wanted to hear. Now you can help me with the medicines. Now you can help me. Now you've learned about you. Now you can start learning about the medicines. And I guess today it's called, because she would always say, the old people always said, when you come into this life, you bring a medicine bundle with you. You bring your medicine bundle with you when you come from the spirit world. And they said it's up to you, each and every one of you here, to fill your bundle, to fill it up. And they wouldn't tell me what was supposed to go in it. All they would say is, when you're ready, it'll come to fill your bundle. When you're ready, it'll come. So I grew up wondering where this was going to come from. You know, where do I get all this stuff? And sure enough, it's come. You know, I'm like, Dan, my bundle's pretty big now. It's big, and all of it just came. And I used to think at one point, where do I go to Walmart, or where do I find all this stuff? But it's not there. And so she said, it's up to you. She said, all I'm going to tell you is that it better be full. Or you can't help yourself, or you can't help anybody else if your bundle isn't full. And she's right. They were right. Absolutely, 100% right. And so as I grew and I learned what is it that we put in our bundle, I learned how do we fill our medicine bundle. And they said, well, one of the things you got to have is patience. You got to have patience. things will come. So the first thing she said I'm going to teach you is about the medicines, the actual plant medicines. And she said, you never, I want you to remember this. She said, you never take unless you give. You never keep taking. She said, from anybody or the natural world. She said, you're going to destroy if you do. You have to give back. And for us, it's tobacco. She said, this one here is the magic. It plays the magic part of life. And that's what one of the medicines the Sky Woman brought us is Indian tobacco, which is a different species of tobacco than the culture tobacco. So she said, the first thing you do is you lay down your tobacco. You put down your tobacco before you take anything. And you ask the Creator, Sogoyan, Desodea Tinualado no Kasuha, Togadi no Dun. Thank you, Creator, for letting me be the person to help another person. Thank you, medicines, for giving up your life so that you're going to help somebody else. You're giving up your life. Yama, thank you. And so that's basically what I said. And then she said, then you go and you talk to them, because that's the language of the universe. You talk to the medicines. You talk to the plants. And then you take. And she said, you don't take everything. You leave some to propagate themselves. And every plant has a leader. In our world, every plant has a leader. We have leaders. It's right in the language. So you take a little bit here, then you take a little bit there, a little bit over here. But only as much as you need. You don't take, you only pick medicines from one growing season to the other. You don't take them for 5 years or 10 years. Only what you need. Leave the rest for the next now. And so I began to do that, to help her with the medicines. And she began to teach me. And it was very, very common at Grande River when I was growing up to walk down the road and see people coming out of the bush. Very, very, just very ordinary. And they would have a sack of medicines they had picked. You don't see that much today, as much now. Hardly ever will you see that today. Because there was a time period, way back in the 50s, the 60s, when on Six Nations, and I'm sure other places, if the RCMP caught you with medicines, that you would get arrested. You would get arrested. So our medicines sort of went underground, so to speak. They were never lost. They were protected. And so we still have all of our medicines today. All of them. All of our songs, everything we have. Still today, because they were protected. Almost a secret organization. And so it was during that time that we still practiced medicines, but sort of secretly in the homes. Because when I was growing up at Six Nations, everybody used natural medicines. Everybody. Yeah. Any household you went into had medicines drying. And that's not as common today as well. And you know, our people knew all this knowledge, and So what I've learned over the years, I've studied and studied and studied, and there was a time when I made the decision that I would do this work openly, and I was sort of afraid to do it, because even though I had the knowledge, because when I was growing up, our people were strong people, really, really strong. Not so much today. And people weren't on medications like they're on today. You know, so I got sort of, I thought, wow, if people are on this medication for, say, diabetes, and I give them this medication in plants, which has the same medicinal properties, you're gonna double, you're gonna contraindicate the medicines. So I thought, boy, I better know what I'm doing. So I went back to school and took courses that they called holistic sciences, and through the Canadian College of Natural Healing. And it was really, really the only school in Canada at that time in the early 80s that offered anything in herbology. So it took me 5.5 years to take all the courses and graduate as a natural health practitioner, knowing the medicinal properties of the plants. So I felt really, really safe and confident. I'm glad that I took the time to do that. And so now there's medicines for everything, even the newer diseases, cancer, fibromyalgia. What else? There's even flesh-eating disease. We don't even know what that is. You know, there's so many diseases that we never had at Six Nations. Never. Polio. Never had any of those diseases way back when. And to me, people ask me all the time, what do you think, Ahedio, they said, is the cause, the root cause of all of the diseases today? And I can say it's two things. It's the environment and what goes on in the environment, and it's the food that we eat. It's the food that we eat today. So it's the water we are drinking. It's the earth. It's so polluted. It's the air. It's environmental today. And so, you know, I think, to me, probably the worst thing that ever happened to us, in my opinion, is the Industrial Revolution. Industrial Revolution. And so there's still diseases that I work with today. Almost every disease I can work with. That the medicines have been tried since the beginning of time. They're true, tried and true. And I remember my grandma saying, your best teacher, your very, very best teacher is the animals. Watch the animals. They're going to teach you what you need to know about medicines. And I thought, well, what's that mean? Well, it's true. She said, if the birds don't eat those white berries, don't you eat them. If the animals don't eat those red berries, don't you eat them. Don't you touch them. And I will say, I've watched animals, birds, all my life, insects, and they're right. They're absolutely right. I cannot say one thing about those Dotahs that I can prove them wrong today. In all of my studies, they were always 100% right. How did they know? How did they know that? So I have to say today, those Dotahs, they were midwives. They were horticulturists. We were not agriculturists, we were horticulturists. They were scientists. They were doctors. They were everything. Amazing, amazing knowledge they knew, because they watched the universe. So yes, there's still medicines today for everything. I don't know, were we going to show that, or is there not enough time?
I can show them in the class.
Okay, that's good. That's good, yeah. We went on a medicine walk a few weeks ago to a place in New York State called the Indian Ladder. And if you ever get a chance to go, it is so beautiful. It's just, amazing mountains, and Tom Porter took us there. He's one of my teachers, and he said that that's where our people would go when an enemy was coming. They would go to this Indian Ladder, and they knew how to get down, way down there. They knew every inch of it. And also there was a lot of rattlesnakes there. And of course the enemy was scared of rattlesnakes, so they would stop at a certain place. The Indians would keep going. Our people would keep going. And there's all caves and amazing, amazing. But the medicines, spectacular. So we went on a medicine walk and gathered some medicines, and I taught, and that's what he'll show you, is I thought about medicines as we walked along. And so, you know, what we're talking about today is, I always feel like, he said you have 50 minutes. And I always feel like, what can you say in 50 minutes? I'm talking about, you know, 76 or 100 years of knowledge. And so I always feel like this is a Reader's Digest version. You're getting this little. And, but I just wanted to say that, you know, we also have prophecy. And the old people said that, you know, they're always telling us about prophecy. And that they said, there will come a time again, when the women will stand up and take their rightful place. There will come a time when this knowledge will return to our people, and we will know it, and we will be able to survive. This is survival that I'm talking about. And so I want to just close and quickly tell you, you know, what is it that you need to put in your medicine bundle? It's up to you. But the old people said, the Dotah said, you need to put at least 4 medicines in there. You know, 4 medicines. A medicine that can help you to build your immune system, number 1. And a medicine that maybe somebody's grieving. Maybe they've had a death in their family. A medicine for birthing. A birthing medicine. And so that's the kind of medicines you start to, most common medicines that you start learning about. And they're just every place here. Every place. They said to put 4 dances in your bundle. 4 dances. So that someone's spirits are down, you know, you can dance for them. You can have them dance. Learn 4 dances. Learn 4 songs, they said, and put that in your bundle. Put that sound and vibration into your bundle. So you should know 4 songs, a traveling song, and a morning song, opening song. We got songs for everything, so there's plenty of songs to learn from, but learn 4. Learn 4. Learn 4 stories. Put 4 stories in your bundle. 4 stories. Because stories is how we carried on with our knowledge. We carried on through stories because we're oral people. I guess today we have all this technology. But if the electricity went out, we'd have to be oral again. So we need to depend on that. And put 4 stories into your bundle. Yeah. Put 4 dreams into your bundle. Because it's dreams that always tell the truth. Pay attention to your dreams. They always tell the truth. And so those kinds of things as you keep adding to your bundle. And I remember years ago when I learned about the eagle. And I thought, oh, I'll never get an eagle feather. where will I ever get an eagle feather? And she talked about the eagle all day. One whole day, all she talked about was the eagle. And I thought, oh, that's so beautiful. And this particular feather was given to me by the youth. They even beat at this, my clan. I thought that's so special. The youth gave it to me for helping them. And then the feather I received today, Nyawa, for that. And so, I don't have time to tell you about the eagle. It'll take me all day, but there'll be another time, I'm sure, pass across again. I just quickly want to also say about this. I used to wonder, how were we able to remember our history, or remember what we were supposed to remember as each, that one group would get old and then you pass on the knowledge. This is a medicine stick. Well, you can only find these in museums today. This is an old medicine stick. And what we would do is we would carve or burn a medicine formula into the stick. This is a woman's formula on this stick here. And that's how we knew to carry on the medicines. Amazing, amazing way of retaining our knowledge. Amazing. So this is one of the ways. Yeah, you'll find these in old history books. Now they might talk about a medicine stick, if you can research that, but they're pretty miraculous. The other way is, I know my time's getting up. He's telling me 3 minutes, 2 minutes. But I want to just quickly show you this, because this is a wampum belt. This particular belt really touches my soul. It just touches me so deeply. It's called the dish with one spoon. Dish with one spoon. Or this is the belt that an agreement we made with the Ojibwe people. This was made with the Ojibwe people, and what it means is we had what we called beaver hunting grounds. And our beaver hunting grounds started at the Niagara Escarpment and ran 900 miles long, right up past Manitoulin Island and wide. And every nation that came into our territory symbolically ate out of the same dish. Go and hunt, go and fish, go and gather medicines, gather food. So that's what this agreement is. We all ate out of the same bowl symbolically with the same spoon. So that told me then, yes. And this is an old belt. And it told me then, we took care of everyone. We doctored everyone. We fed everybody. We shared. So to me, this belt symbolizes the depth of sharing and caring. We took care of everybody. I know there's a lot more to say, and I love talking. And but I just want to say Nyawagoa. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for lending me your ears. A little while, I give them back to you now. And yeah, Nyawa. I don't know if we got any 5 minutes for questions. I don't know.
Yeah, well, yeah, let's have like maybe 5 minutes. We've got to whisk you off to the university, but what a gift, I think, especially just all the things you shared with respect to the class. I think hopefully it resonated with some of the people here, and yeah, I remember meeting you by what, 6, maybe 6, 7 years ago in Kingston, and just blew me away then, so it's great to have you here again. But if there's questions, yeah, maybe we can take 5 minutes from people. If not, see you later. I just joke. Are there any questions?
Okay, well that's good. I'm a good teacher.
Oh, yeah, you're great.
Are you still giving talks or courses? First of all, I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much. And then
I still talk. All over. I've traveled more this year than I've ever traveled is this year. I don't know what's happening. Something's happening out there because people just seem to want to know this survival knowledge. There's something happening, and that's in our prophecies as well, that this knowledge would return. So, there's, all the time. Yeah, I'll be in Toronto next week, Queen's University the week after, and on and on and on. So, thank you. Now,
We have a small gift for you. Is there another question? Yeah, sure. Anybody? Going once? Okay. We have a little gift for you. It has some swag in it, I guess.
great.
And this water bottle too.
Okay.
A matching set.
Oh, matching set.
Don't go re-gifting it now.
My matching set, thank you.
So, yeah,
Thank you for
thanks.